The President. Members' motions. Motions under Articles 73(5) and 73(10) of the Basic Law. First motion. Motion to be moved by Ms.Tanya CHAN to summon the Chief Secretary for Administration and the Permanent Secretary for Home Affairs to attend before the Council on the 24th of January 2018 to testify and produce documents. Members who wish to speak on the motion will please press the Request to Speak button. And I'll call upon Ms. Tanya CHAN to speak and move the motion. Good morning, President. It doesn't matter if you mispronounce my name. I move that the motion is printed on the agenda be passed. I now propose a question to you that the motion moved by Ms. Tanya CHAN be passed. Secretary for Home Affairs.
President, the West Kowloon Cultural District is an important cultural infrastructure for Hong Kong. Based on the planning, theme, and design principles of the approved West Kowloon Cultural District Development Plan approved in January 2013, the WKCD will become a world-class integrated art and culture area with local and traditional characteristics together with international elements, and that would enrich art and cultural living, create employment opportunities, and boost the tourism trade, and turn Hong Kong into an international cultural hub. The development of the Hong Kong Palace Museum at the WKCD can enrich facilities in the district and realize the vision of the cultural district. Every project undergoes a process of planning and execution, and the responsible teams are obliged to carry out advanced study and planning. For the Hong Kong Palace Museum, the WKCD Authority and the Beijing Palace Museum signed a Memorandum of Understanding on the 23rd of December 2016, which was the first step in ascertaining the project. Once the advanced works of the project's plan completed, the SAR government and WKCDA invited the media to attend the signing ceremony of the Memorandum of Understanding signed with the Beijing Palace Museum, with a subsequent press briefing to highlight details of the project. After signing the MOU, the former Chief Secretary cum Chairman of the WKCD Board attended a special meeting of the LegCo House Committee on the 6th of January 2017. She explained in detail the process of planning of the Hong Kong Palace Museum, various considerations and details of the project. The full text of the MOU was included in the papers of the House Committee to reflect the intention of cooperation between the WKCDA and Beijing Palace Museum. The former Chief Secretary also held a press conference on the 10th of January 2017 to comprehensively answer various questions from the press and public. The WKCDA held an 8-week public consultation program from the 11th of January to the 8th of March, and it spanned 8 weeks. The consultation collected views from the public on the project and included the design and operation of the museum, as well as exhibition and education activities. On the 21st of April 2017, the WKCDA submitted the gist of the public views to the subcommittee on the on monitoring the implementation of the WKCD for members' reference. On a meeting on the 9th of May, the WKCD board examined and accepted the public consultation report commissioned by the WKCDA to an independent consultant, and they also agreed to sign a cooperation agreement with the Beijing Cultural Museum to promote the project. The WKCDA reported the consultation outcome at a subcommittee meeting on the 29th of May last year. Between May and June 2017, the WKCDA arranged for members to inspect the various reports mentioned in the motion, including the preliminary study drafted by Waters Economics Limited and Roy Frank Surveyors on the property development exhibition center, the outcome of the review on exhibition hub coordinated by Waters Economics Limited, C, the commercial feasibility analysis on the exhibition center drafted by Ernst & Young Transactions Limited, and D, the design concept report for the mega performance venue exhibition center site drafted by Rocco Design Architects Limited. And the WKCDA allowed members to learn more about the feasibility of the WKCD Mega Performance Venue and Exhibition Center and the analysis and considerations in the use or other development uses of the development of the hub, including the timeline and process. On the 29th of June 2017, the WKCDA and Beijing Palace Museum signed the cooperation agreement, and the agreement established the main principles of cooperation and fully reflected the outcome of the negotiations. The WKCDA will be responsible for the daily operation, curating, and maintenance of the Hong Kong Palace Museum, and the WKCDA will set up a wholly owned subsidiary responsible for managing the museum. The cooperation agreement and the arrangements exceed the constraints for the loaning of artifacts to outside the country, including Hong Kong. On the day of the signing ceremony, the WKCDA announced the full text of the cooperation agreement, and a copy was submitted to the LegCo subcommittee for members' reference. Since the signing of the MOU, the WKCDA had explained the details and the latest progress of the Palace Museum. And recently, on the 21st of November last year at a meeting, the design concept, corporate governance, and the progress in building a curatorial team was reported at a meeting. We can see that we have always reported the progress of the project to LegCo members and the public in a highly transparent and responsible manner, and on different occasions we also provided full details of the Hong Kong Palace Museum project to LegCo. That's why I find this motion unnecessary, and I urge members to veto the motion. Thank you, President. Does any other member wish to speak?
If not, yes, Mr. Charles Mark. I would like to speak briefly in support of Ms. Tanya Chan's motion moved under Article 73 of the Basic Law. We would like to seek some documents and information about the West Kowloon Palace Museum. In the schedule to the motion, Ms. Chan has already spelled out the details about the documents to be produced by the administration. The administration is also summoned to give evidence, to testify and produce documents. Now, the former Chief Secretary for Administration, the current Chief Executive, Carrie Lam, said in when the report was released, at first she was in contact with the curator of the Palace Museum in 2014. And then, on the 23rd of December 2016, that's 1.5 years later, a collaborative agreement was signed. Now, of course, the public may feel they have been kept in the dark about most of the arrangements. We only found out at a very late stage. Now, we think that this... Mr. Mok, do you have a phone nearby? Can you move it further away, please? So, the government thinks this is fine, but we don't. You might recall at a time after the agreement was announced, many people in Hong Kong may have no opposition to the Palace Museum being an important museum at the West Kowloon Cultural District. Now, for the West Kowloon Cultural District, it's something we've been talking about for many years. I was on an advisory committee, and then there was a public engagement. Everyone had a high expectation of the WKCD. We all hoped that the project could be speeded up, and but how come then eventually the scale was curtailed and so on. So different people may have different expectations of the WKCD. Some consider this to be a cultural and arts hub. So they want the performing venues and the museums must be done properly, and others think there should be plenty of greening and provide some open space for the public. But then all of a sudden, there is this major project. And we're talking about public money being used to finance the project. Now, so is it because it's a project from Beijing, so it should be treated specially? Because we already have a Xu Center, we have. What if we have another new performing arts venue? But then all of a sudden we're told, okay, this is a brilliant idea. We never thought about it, so let's do it. Is that how it went? And that's why many people have have a lot of questions about that. That's why I support Ms. Tanya Chan's motion under Article 73 of the Basic Law. So we could have access to a lot of the important documents. On the 23rd of December 2016, the then Chief Secretary for Administration, now the Chief Executive, Mrs. Carrie Lam, she announced that the details of the collaboration between the WKCD and the Beijing Palace Museum, there was a press conference. Now I see Ms. Tanya Chan is demanding the Chief Secretary and the Permanent Secretary to produce all relevant documents regarding the meetings and discussions with the Beijing Palace Museum on the building of the Hong Kong Palace Museum in the West Kowloon Cultural District, including letters, information papers, and agreement documents. Now we hope the government will produce such documents, and I hope the government won't give an answer that they haven't kept any records. So that's been an ongoing problem, it seems. Sometimes you don't know whether the government keeps records, or even if they keep records, they may tell us that they haven't got it. I hope they don't do that because that's lying. Anyway, so this is very important. And second set of documents, in June 2016, the WKCDA directly appointed Rocco Design Architects at the consultancy fee of $4.5 million to provide pre-development consultancy services regarding the use of the P46 and 47 site. I hope the Chief Secretary or the Permanent Secretary on behalf of the administration will produce all relevant documents regarding the appointment of the said firm, including letters, contracts, minutes of meetings, and information papers. As you might recall, what was most contentious was that not only was there a secret discussion, actually someone was engaged to do some work for a fee of $4.5 billion. Well, $4.5 million may not be too much, it's not a small sum either. But anyway, the money was spent without anybody knowing about it. So they are making it a fait accompli. I understand. Even in the sector, the architectural services and surveying sectors also have questions why this particular firm was engaged. Maybe I could do a better job. Why am I not approached? So that's something of concern to the architectural services sector as well. And the third set of documents, in July 2015, WKCDA entered into a consultancy contract with a company called Waters Economics Limited regarding a review of the use of multi-purpose venues. We hope the government will provide the relevant consultancy contract and the consultancy report. We want both reports and contract. As I said, the government has provided some of the documents, but they not in full. Fourth set of documents. In January 2016, WKCDA entered into a consultancy contract with Ernst & Young Transactions Limited regarding a commercial viability study of developing a multi-purpose venue to be used for performance, meeting, and exhibition purposes. We would like the administration to produce the consultancy contract and the consultancy report to this council. Then next, in October 2015, WKCDA set up a 5-member core team to explore the feasibility of building a Hong Kong Palace Museum in WKCD. We want the administration to produce all relevant documents regarding the core team, including the dates of meetings, so we know how many meetings they've had, how often they held meetings, and so on. And then in early 2016, the 5-member core team consulted 3 senior members of the WKCDA board on the feasibility of building a Hong Kong Palace Museum. Again, this seems a bizarre arrangement. So even members on the board might not know much. In any case, the government only appoint people to the board who won't criticize the government. So they'll say, oh, it's fine, no problem. But then for those involved in government projects, they will say, how can this be? How can board members not know anything? So there are only 3 senior members on the board who've been consulted. So we asked for the production of all relevant documents regarding the consultation meetings, including the dates of meetings, meeting documents, and minutes of meetings, and so on. On the 20th of April 2017, the WKCDA board, upon the request of members, provided some of that information. But from what we see, a lot of the information has been redacted. We find that unacceptable. Now, you may say this is commercially sensitive information, so it cannot be made public, but as members who have the duty to monitor the government, we should have access to such information so we could consider the matter properly. So we want the government not to do what is done in the past, that is redacting a lot of the information. Now, Ms. Tanya CHAN has asked for government documents in the motion, and I've just explained briefly the documents she's asked for. And you can see these documents are very important for the Legislative Council to carry out its check and balance on the government effectively. Now, if the government wouldn't produce the documents even upon request, there's nothing we can do. We can't do our work. So that's why we are invoking our powers under Article 73 of the Basic Law. We ask the government to provide the information as soon as possible. The deadline we've imposed is the 24th of January 2018, yesterday. But then the President told us, well, the meeting started yesterday, so we could still discuss it today. So that's the deadline. But you can see, if you have the information, you just need to walk across to the other building to get the information. So it's not something difficult to do. Or if you say you can't even dig up the documents, then it's a serious problem. Don't tell us. This is a project ongoing, that you've already destroyed the documents. It's a matter of whether you are prepared to produce the documents. So I hope members will all support our motion. Thank you. Mr. Siu Kao-chun. Good morning, President. I support the motion moved by Ms. Tanya CHAN to summon the Chief Secretary for Administration and the Permanent Secretary for Home Affairs to attend before the Council on to testify and produce documents in relation to the Hong Kong Palace Museum. All relevant documents, including agreements, books, records, or documents, should be produced, and the government should testify or give evidence in relation to the agreement with the Beijing Palace Museum signed on the 29th of June 2017. Now, I think the first question we have to ask is, do Hong Kong people need the Palace Museum, or does the Palace Museum need Hong Kong people? This project has sparked much controversy. From the 11th of January to the 8th of March 2017, the government conducted a public consultation exercise to collect public views. But we know the government will only listen to views pleasing to its ears. If the government really cares so much about public consultation, then we should have had universal retirement pension by now. Ms. Luk Ying-toy, the former cultural minister, attended a talk at university last year, and she was interviewed after the talk by the media, and she was asked about this controversy involving the Beijing Palace. At the time, she was the official representative of the Taiwanese government. Of course, she dared not comment on it. She didn't say whether she supported the project or not. Otherwise, people might accuse her of meddling with internal affairs of China. But what she said deserves some further consideration by us. She said, apart from the cultural values of the Beijing Museum, we have to consider for Hong Kong people. Mr. Siu, please stop. This motion is about producing documents, not about whether the Palace Museum should be built at the WKCD. So please come back to this motion as to why you support this motion or not. It's not about other issues. Thank you for your reminder. If I could just wrap up with one sentence, I'll move on to my next point. So the question she asked was, for generations of Hong Kong people to learn about aesthetics after they graduate. So it's a matter of what museums they visit when they are in primary or secondary schools and what is lacking. If there is not such a study, then it should be done as soon as possible. Now, I support Ms. Tanya Chan's motion today because for the palace is about what Hong Kong people need to learn about cultural values. Mr. Siu Ka-chun, let me remind you again, you have to come back to the issue of why you support the motion to summon the Chief Secretary for Administration and so on. It's not about whether a palace museum should be built at the WKCD. President, I'm saying in this whole exercise, the government failed to do this important exploration or study, and without that, then we need to summon the Chief Secretary and the Permanent Secretary to come and respond. Now, there are many major projects at the WKCD, M+ Museum, C2 Center, M+ Pavilion. There were always public views, collection public views before final design was decided upon. But for the Palace Museum, architect was appointed to do the work. It's never been done this way. And now Carrie Lam said that Rocco Design Architects was appointed to do the design. It sparked an outcry among architects. Now, for the Rocco Design Architects Limited is also responsible for East Kowloon Cultural Project. So it sparked a lot of questions. Now, Rocco Yim has got 2 sets of major contracts on cultural venues. Is there any transfer of interest? Now, Carrie Lam said that Rocco Yim has full appreciation of the vision of the WKCD. His professional expertise is well recognized. And that's why it is an appropriate arrangement to directly appoint Rocco Yim. But then there was never an open design contest or collection views, and so other architects questioned this approach. And some architects believe this is strange that the government should take this approach. Even for other well-known museums around the world, some of them may not be funded by the government, but usually they will have an open design context to decide upon the design of the museum. Now, it's fine if he wants to include local elements, but why can't there be an open tendering? Why can't there be contest on design? Why is it because the government had to rush to announce a project so it could be announced for the 20th anniversary of the reunification? Now, it's said that the whole for the West Kowloon Cultural District, at first it was a single tender project, and eventually it's split into many tender contracts. For the M+ Museum, M+ Pavilion, etc., the views of the public were solicited before a design was done. Mr. Siu Ka-chun, let me remind you once again, you have digressed. If you keep digressing, I have to stop you from speaking. You have to come back to explain why you believe these documents should be produced. President, I respect you very much. I don't see why, though, I'm digressing. Because I'm saying the government has not carried out open tendering. I want to ask why Rocco Yim was considered suitable. So I wanted the documents. I wanted to see the discussion why it was concluded there's no need for open tendering. It says that Rocco Yim has great passion for Chinese culture. He's well recognized in the profession. So would the same arguments be used in the future? So that's why I'm asking these questions. I want to seek the documents. I want to find out what the discussion was like at the time. Thank you, President. And also, I'm talking about the whole, the original intention of this whole WKCD project. There's a planning intention for this project, for this district. The C2 Center, the cultural museum or the mega performance venue. We arrived at those ideas after many consultation sessions. The watering museum was an excellent idea, but it didn't work out. But I respected that. But I never heard about the Palace Museum before.
Some people say that, well, today we showcase A and tomorrow we have B. That actually undermines the overall design and concept of the WKCD. And it seems that this is like children's plaything. You can chop and change everything. And that was said by Mr. Ho Heng-gei, which is the the dean of CUHK. Is it the case that, just like what Mr. Ho said, that today we have A, tomorrow we have B in WKCD? Of course, we do need a macro and complete concept that promotes local culture. Because if you change what is placed there, this will have an impact. Mr. Xiu, we're not here to discuss about the overall concept of the WKCD. Please focus on this paper. You have completely digressed. Please sit down. Mr. Leung Yiu-chung. Mr. President, I would like to say something about the background of this motion. On the 23rd of December 2016, the former Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying and the former CS4A, Mrs. Carrie Lam, signed a cooperation agreement with Beijing Palace Museum to build a Hong Kong Palace Museum in WKCD to showcase permanently the collection of Beijing Palace Museum to be completed in 2022. This will have about a large area. They said that the Jockey Club Fund will agree to donate about $3.5 billion to fund the project. They said that the Hong Kong Palace Museum is not a branch of the Beijing Palace Museum, so the Beijing Palace Museum will not be involved in the day-to-day operation of the Hong Kong Palace Museum, which is fully responsible for the WKCD authority, and a wholly owned subsidiary company will be set up. Ms. Tanya CHAN made a number of requests, and I support all of them. From the time when the decision was made to build the Hong Kong Palace Museum to tendering, there is still a lot of unknown. So far, the administration has not given us a clear picture. Well, there is also procedural justice involved. The administration has the responsibility to clearly account for what exactly happened in the entire process. We're talking about a lot of controversies. Before the decision was made to build the Hong Kong Palace Museum, there was no public consultation. And Section 19 of the WKCDA ordinance said that the WKCDA has to, at the appropriate time, conduct public consultation on all matters related to the WKCD. However, the administration has not consulted the public nor the LegCo. They decided to build the Hong Kong Palace Museum. This is a clear breach of procedural justice. Mrs. Carrie Lam said that the decision to locate Hong Kong Palace Museum at WKCD is part of a cultural initiatives. This doesn't involve rezoning. The WKCDA has also unanimously endorsed the decision. Mrs. Lam said that no one can reject request by the Beijing Palace Museum. This also involves the Ministry of Culture as well as the Beijing Palace Museum. So if there are objections during consultation, this will be very embarrassing. I don't know if you find that ludicrous and ridiculous. Is this logical? You're worried that there may be objections from the public consultation, so you simply skipped it outright. Does it mean that if you don't consult, then there won't be any objections? Isn't it burying your head in the sand? So you're afraid of objections. That's why you did not consult. You can see that government officials just do what they want to do, and they have completely disregarded public sentiment. Public sentiment is that is the various proposals floated from the community to the administration to make good use of the WKCD, because the WKCD gives Hong Kong a cultural environment. They hope that there will be support given to local authors, local creators, artists. However, within a very short time, a decision was made to build the Hong Kong Palace Museum. This cast doubt on whether the administration is only doing it to please Beijing. It is completely opaque. We don't know what roles are played by the Chinese authority and the Hong Kong administration. How come there was no public consultation and no account given? So I support the first point of the motion. That is, the CS4A and the Permanent Secretary have to produce all relevant documents regarding the meetings and discussions with the Beijing Palace Museum on the building of the Hong Kong Palace Museum in the WKCD, including letters, information papers, and agreement documents. There is another controversy. There was no open tender. Rocco Design Architect Limited was directly appointed to be responsible for the design. In June 2016, the WKCDA directly appointed Rocco Yim to be responsible for the design, and a consultancy fee of $4.5 million was given to provide a draft. And they also said that, she also said that she was the decision maker, and she directly approached Rocco Yim for the project because she thought that he would be a suitable candidate. And she said that we should not politicize this. WKCDA said that Rocco Yim understands the vision and mission of the WKCD, and he is well known. Directly appointing him is appropriate. However, if it's appropriate and suitable, then that's why there did not need to be any open tender. Well, then when it comes to projects of various sizes, I'm sure that the administration has a list of their favorites. Does it mean that they don't have to go through a tender exercise? Does the administration think that they are really smart, that they can simply go straight to their favorite? Architects and architectural bodies said that well-known museums, whether they are run privately or publicly, will select a design based on open tender or competition. Mr. Lau Wing-Guang said that this approach takes away the opportunity for other architects to participate. Usually, for consultancy, preliminary design, detailed design, every single step is done by open tendering. How come Hong Kong Palace Museum is different from other projects in the WKCD? This is only a simple procedure. Why was it skipped? Why Did they want to directly appoint a certain person based on their own wish without consulting the public or tender exercise? We need some answers. So I support point number 2. That is, the Chief Secretary and the Permanent Secretary are required to produce all relevant documents regarding the appointment of Rocco Design Architects Limited in June 2016 by direct appointment at the consultancy fee of $4.5 million to provide pre-development consultancy services. These include letters, contracts, minutes of meetings, and information papers. Number 3 is in relation to the large-scale performing arts venue. It's sacrificed because of the Hong Kong Palace Museum. We need answers. In 2008, a decision was made to have a large-scale performing venue, a mega performing venue that housed tens of thousands of people. However, the decision was changed, and shortly afterwards, a decision was made to have the Hong Kong Palace Museum. Does it mean that this mega performance venue it was sacrificed for no good reason? Of course, the WKCDA denied that. They said that they have gone through careful considerations, namely commercial viability as well as market conditions. Of course, it's just a load of hot air. They said that the main stadium of the Kai Tak Sports Park and the Hong Kong Coliseum are there. And they said that mega performance venue has nothing to do with the building of Hong Kong Palace Museum. They said that they have engaged 2 consultants to study the use and development of the MPV, Mega Performance Venue. The decision was made based on the views of the 2 consultancy firms and not the wish of the administration. However, it's blatantly obvious. The more you try to cover it, the more obvious it is. You may make excuses that may sound feebly reasonable, but is not. Looking at the chronology and what was said by the WKCDA, we can't help but wonder. In 2016, May, the then CS4A, Mrs. Carrie Lam, approached Rocco Yim and senior members of the WKCDA. It seems that they are trying to pave the way to build the Hong Kong Palace Museum and shelve the project of the MPV. And Waters Economics Limited founder said to the public that in July 2015, their firm was directly appointed without open tender exercise. Do you think that is reasonable or not? The administration said that there will be a new structure sprouting at the venue instead of the MPV. What do you think that is? They have not taken into consideration the findings of the consultancy firms, and before the report was ready, they have made a decision to build the Hong Kong Palace Museum. There were lots of questions. However, we all had answers. It's just like the administration thought that they could fool us. How do you describe the entire situation? That the administration is shameless. It rings a bell. It's just like a repeat of Hong Kong TV. Well, they said they use consultancy firms as an excuse. What is the report of the consultancy? Has the administration considered that? Please show us. You don't have to be afraid if it's genuine. Show us the report.
I agree with Ms. Tanya Chan's other requests that the Secretary and Chief Secretary and Permanent Secretary must produce the consultancy contract signed with Waters Economics Limited and Ernst & Young Transactions Limited. I also request the government to produce the feasibility study by the 5-member core team in 2016 and the meetings and records on the 5-member core team and the consultation of the WKCDA board, and the Hong Kong Jockey Club was also involved in this saga. So who would pay the consultancy fees? As you know, the 3.5 billion construction fee would be supported fully by the Jockey Club Charities Trust, and they circumvened LegCo scrutiny. Carrie Lam stressed that such practice did not serve to circumvene LegCo, but it was a gesture by the Jockey Club to pay back to the society. Does any other member wish to speak? Mr. Ray Chan, call for quorum, please.
楊岳橋議員。
Mr. Alvin Yang. Thank you, President. Now, of course, the position of the civic party is to support our party member, Ms.Tanya CHAN. But it's not just because she's a party member, it's because what she requests makes sense. Now, without any knowledge of the public, the Palace Museum at the West Kowloon District Council went ahead, and there are many questions that need to be answered. So this is a tiny motion for the government to clarify what actually happened in entering into that agreement. So we need to remind the public what happened that leads to this debate here. Now, all of a sudden, the Hong Kong government sent us a so-called Christmas gift that we never expected. It was a memorandum of understanding signed with the Palace Museum of Beijing. In the whole process, there was no consultation, and LegCo knew nothing about it also. The government said that there is a confidentiality agreement between the Beijing Palace Museum and Hong Kong. That's why the matter could only be made public when the MOU was signed. And also this museum was to be built, funded entirely by the Jockey Club. And so since no public funds are to be used, so there's no need to go through LegCo. So only 5 in the core team who are senior officials and members knew about it. No one else did. So this was kept totally confidential, but you can call that working behind closed doors. Now, the WKCDA stated in the WKCD ordinance that must give information on all relevant matters and facilities, and at the time considered appropriate by the WKCDA, the public should be consulted on various issues. And then in another provision, it says that when development plans are being drafted, the WKCDA should, at an appropriate time, consult the public, and also consult the Secretary for Home Affairs. And then there's another section, 21 Record 5. It says that when drafting development plans, the WKCDA should consider views collected from public consultation. So, put simply, all these provisions say that the public must be consulted and public views must be considered. Now, there's no consultation, and the Palace Museum went ahead. That's definitely against the spirit on this ordinance. And this ordinance was enacted by the government to make sure that there's transparency in the WKCD project. But at the end, the government consulted nobody and went ahead with the Palace Museum in secret. So it led us to wonder whether we could trust the Hong Kong SL government to respect the rule of law. And then after the announcement was made, there was an 8-week consultation by the WKCDA. Well, perhaps you can call it consultation, but it's not exactly a consultation, because it's definitely a precedent of fait accompli. Is a bad precedent. Now, for any cultural facilities or infrastructural projects in collaboration with the mainland, they will all be done this way. That is, the public will not be consulted at all. Then what is the point of the public giving their views, and could this council perform our role in monitoring the government? That's why we believe this motion should be passed. And we must ask the government to make public all documents relating to the 5-member core team, including the dates of meeting minutes, and so on. That's another controversy, which is about open tendering. At the time, the then Chief Secretary of Administration, Carrie Lam, signed the MOU, and soon after it was rumored that Rock Ko Yim was appointed as the architect, a consultant. Now, this is unusual because for all other WKCD projects, there was open tendering. But then Rock Ko Yim was not just appointed the consultant, but his firm was made the consultancy firm as well without any tendering. Now, the sum involved is $4.5 million. Of course, $4.5 million not a large sum compared to the cost of many projects, but the government has paid a higher price. That is, the government has undermined the well-established procedure for procurement for the WKCD. Now, there are rules on procurement. If there should be a single tender, it must be approved first by the WKCDA before it's done, and then usually there should be open tendering. So the documents are produced even when single tenders are intended to be invited. The parties being invited should not be made aware of that. So therefore, the employment of Rocco Yim, that's certainly against the established procedure. The government might say this is an extraordinary case, so there's a special arrangement. But after this incident, does it mean that the government would not need to go with any tendering for projects not funded by public money, and they could just appoint their own consultants has had to do with transfer of interest? Because one is not, this precedent is said that could lead to corruption. So that's why we have every reason to support Ms. Tanya Chan's motion. There's another controversy about the Palace Museum, which is the cost, construction cost. Yes, the Jockey Club is to fund the construction, but the government has given no explanation on the construction cost. Now, for the MOU signed by Carrie Lam, Article 1.4, it says that the WKCDA will be responsible for the construction, curating, and management of the Palace Museum. There will be sufficient funds provided for the long-term management, operation, and maintenance of the museum. And then on the 26th of June 2017, as the chairman of the WKCDA, Mr. Matthew Zheng, signed a collaborative agreement. 3.1A is similar. Let's say so Party A, that's the WKCDA, will be responsible for the design management of the museum. And after the construction or completion of the museum, the WKCDA will be responsible for its day-to-day operation, management, and maintenance. We all know it's costly to maintain cultural artifacts, and if it's national treasure grade of artifacts, it's even more expensive to maintain the artifacts. And they have, because there has to be certain level of humidity, temperature, and so on. And there must also be stringent fire services facilities, so there are high standards to observe. Now, after the completion of the museum, does the WKCDA have the means to afford such an operating cost? The government has never explained that. Now, the operating costs may not be covered by admission fees, because if admission fees are too high, then nobody would want to visit the museum. And this museum, compared to other museums in Hong Kong, this is not a particularly large museum. But there will be 7,600 square meters of exhibition gallery at the Palace Museum. Now, for the Sha Tin Hong Kong Heritage Museum, the exhibition area is 7,500 square meters. Hong Kong Museum History, 7,000 square meters of exhibition space. So, therefore, we know that the Palace Museum is not particularly big. Cannot be considered a flagship museum also. So how much would be the operating cost? Now, Hong Kong is 4 hours away from Beijing and 1 hour from Taipei. Both places have palace museums. Unless we have more national treasure grade of exhibits, how appealing would the museum be to visitors? So there's a question mark there. That's why we agree the government should be asked to disclose all consultancy documents, so we know how the government work out the operating costs. We hope the WKCDA has considered the operating costs, and we'd rather believe that the Hong Kong SL government has the vision to realize that the operating costs would be substantial. But if the government has not taken that into account, then at the end, the museum may have to rely on donations to maintain its operation. If there's no donation, then at the end, the taxpayers will have to pick up the tab. Is that desirable? The government considered that the Palace Museum would enhance the Chinese identity of Hong Kong people. Yes, bringing artifacts to Hong Kong and set up Palace Museum in Hong Kong is something neutral initially. And as the government said, maybe it will help to enhance the Chinese identity of the Hong Kong people. But then there are various concerns that I have raised just now. Would this Palace Museum remain a neutral project? I have great concern about that. Now, when the Palace Museum is open, if we don't want it to be open with a huge package causing concerns to the public, then every member here should support our motion. So we ask the government to disclose all the documents, we get to the bottom of the truth, and then we could address all the concerns. Then when the Palace Museum is open to the public, then we will all welcome it. So for these reasons, I support Ms. Tanya Chan's motion. I hope other members will support it as well. Thank you. Does any other member wish to speak? Mr. Lau Kwok Fan. Thank you, President. Ms. Tanya Chan has moved this motion to summon the Chief Secretary of Administration and the Permanent Secretary. Now, we have a joint subcommittee on the WKCD. We've had many discussions. As you know, these motions were moved in the first place just to stall the passage of the amendments to the Rules of Procedure. Now that amendments to the Rules of Procedure have been passed, this motion should be withdrawn so this Council business could resume normal. More than half a year ago, Mr. Jamie Ng has proposed a debate on reindustrialization. It's been on the agenda for so long, we still haven't got to that have that debate. So then this Council's business should actually resume normal by now. Still, I have to respond to this motion. It's a good thing to have the Palace Museum at the West Kowloon Cultural District. Yes, Ms. Elvin Young said that there's a Palace Museum in Beijing and one in Taipei. You can ask any province or cities on the mainland if they want a Palace Museum, they will definitely say yes. It will be a resounding yes even. And if you ask other countries, what if we put a Palace Museum in your country? I'm sure no country would decline such treasurable gift, because you know the Palace Museum has a lot of artifacts, a lot of treasures. It's not just about Chinese culture, it's about world culture as well. So I'm sure any place around the world would welcome a Palace Museum. And also Hong Kong has worked with Palace Museum on various exhibitions. Every time there was a high turnout. But there are restrictions, so each time only 30 or so pieces of artifacts could be exhibited, and people were yearning for more. For exhibition of artifacts outside the country, there are strict requirements. It must not be more than 120 pieces. And at most, the exhibition period could be 3 months. Now, Hong Kong will collaborate with Palace Museum to set up a Hong Kong Palace Museum, and 900 pieces of artifacts could be on loan on a long-term basis. This is totally unprecedented, and the majority of the public welcome that.
As soon as the news was made public, well, that was quite some time ago, I have visited some districts and spoken to people. They were all very happy to know that they can go to WKCD to see these artifacts. Mr. Lau, I know that there are different views when it comes to WKCD. Please come back to this point whether you support or not Ms. Tanya Chan's motion. A number of people said that the Hong Kong Palace Museum serves a political purpose. I don't agree. This is just fear-mongering, and they have distorted the views of the public. This is a gift from our country. I am the chairman of the Electrical Subcommittee to monitor WKCD. We have the Chief Secretary coming to the Electrical on a number of occasions to talk to us and answer questions about the Hong Kong Palace Museum. A lot of members have asked questions. Government officials and WKCDA were happy to answer all those questions. There will be more opportunities for further discussions in this subcommittee. As far as I know, the CS and the Permanent Secretary were happy to answer questions. My understanding is that the CS4A would attend the subcommittee meeting to talk about different issues. Members can ask questions as much as they want, and they can follow up in the subcommittee. We have expressed our views to the administration, and the administration were willing to attend meetings. We can leave it to the subcommittee to deal with this. So I don't agree with the motion. Some people talk about consultation and the architect. At the earliest, it was an intention to cooperate. Mrs. Carrie Lam announced the cooperation, and for some time afterwards there was public consultation, and the consultation showed that Hong Kong people support the building of the Hong Kong Palace Museum. And then the MOU was signed. The motion and the accusations made by those members were not founded. This is a great project. Hong Kong people and people from all over the world would think that if there can be a Palace Museum in the place where they live, it would be a great idea. And they asked, well, the mega performance venue has disappeared, and they needed answers. There were discussions in the WKCDA. There were discussions in the LegCo. Last year, there were discussions, and there was something we have endorsed is the Kai Tak Sports Park. Is a large venue that can house several tens of thousands of people. If we have Kai Tak Sports Park and a mega performance venue, there may be duplication. And the objective may be affected. If you just talk about WKCD, if you don't mention about the Kai Tak Sports Park, then you've only told part of the truth. Please don't forget that in the subcommittee and in LegCo, a lot of questions have been answered, a lot of topics have been discussed. If you want more information, well, you need to ask questions. You need to get more clear if you're not clear, and that should be done in a subcommittee. The subcommittee was set up to serve this purpose so that there can be focused discussion. I can't support this motion. If members are interested in these issues, they can join the subcommittee and follow it up there. I so submit. Ms. Ann Chan. President, I oppose to Ms. Tanya Chan's motion on Articles 73 bracket 5 and 73 bracket 10 of the Basic Law of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region of the PRC. Ms. Tanya Chan would like to summon the Chief Secretary of Administration and the Permanent Secretary for Home Affairs to attend before the Council on the 24th of January 2018 to produce all relevant papers, books, records or documents and to testify or give evidence in relation to the West WKCDA's agreement with the Beijing Palace Museum. Ms. Tanya Chan, first of all, asked for detailed information in relation to the MOU of corporations signed. The announcement was made on the 23rd of December 2016. At that time, the opposition said that the administration should not sign this MOU on cooperation. It's only a memorandum of understanding, so it has no legal basis. The last paragraph of the MOU said that either party can at any time with any reason by giving 6 months notice to terminate this MOU. In other words, if Ms. Tanya Chan or the opposition insist that the Hong Kong Palace Museum should not be built, well, this is only an MOU. The cooperation agreement may not be signed in the end. And on the 9th of January 2017, the administration conducted public consultation. All of Hong Kong actively participated in the consultation. 14.7% of the respondents opposed to the construction. Over half of them, that is 50-something% agree, and 30% or so of the respondents expressed no comment. Majority of Hong Kong people support the construction of the Hong Kong Palace Museum at the WKCD. As a result, on the 29th of June 2017, the cooperation agreement was signed. The Chief Executive and the CS4A followed the procedure. Today, members asked whether there was no consultation before an architectural firm was appointed. Please do not tell only part of the truth. It's only a mere amount of $4.5 million to provide advanced services. This is not direct allocation of funding from the LegCo. It went through the WKCDA within that purview. Ms. Chan asked questions back in 2015, something about the authority, something about consultancy contracts, reviewing of facilities and venues. I think they are secondary in nature. I oppose to the motion to summon the CS4A and the Chief Executive. The CS4A on the 6th of January 2017 in a special meeting of the House Committee explained all the issues. And in the subcommittee of the LegCo, there were a number of meetings dedicated to the discussion of the Hong Kong Palace Museum. Ms. Tanya Chan required the administration to provide more documents, say, for example, letters, information papers, agreement documents. Well, the MOU and government papers have been supplied. If you need a specific document, please provide them to the administration directly. If it's not confidential, I'm sure that the administration would be happy to provide it. Well, the motion required the administration to come on the 24th of January. Today is the 25th of January, so there is no need for this motion to be here, so I oppose to it. Does any other member wish to speak? Mr. Eddie Ju. Thank you, Mr. President. I speak in support of Ms. Tanya Chan's motion. Before I speak, I think there is a common ground shared by a lot of Hong Kong people. We don't oppose strongly about the Hong Kong Palace Museum. A lot of people like Edward Lau welcome it. So please do not let it be the focus of the debate, saying that we oppose to the mere existence of this thing on the face of the earth. I support Ms. Tanya Chan's motion because of two pertinent point related to the operation of the Hong Kong government as well as the relations between Hong Kong and mainland authorities. We have been given a function by the Basic Law The LegCo is here to monitor the use of public money by the administration.
But in recent years, the government would cite the reason that with so many questions at LegCo, they could not implement the work as scheduled, so they sought to circumvene LegCo by different means so that they could achieve what they want. And the current chief executive, Carrie Lam, is adept at this. And the Palace Museum is only one such example. Another example is the third runway of the Hong Kong International Airport, which is a 140 billion plus project, and it requires no scrutiny at LegCo. And the means include financing, but the government would underwrite the project. And as for the West Kowloon Cultural District, the government would find someone to pay up, and this time they approached the Hong Kong Jockey Club, and this is not a new antic already. When Carrie Lam was Secretary for Development for the Central Police Station, they asked, she invited Rocco Yim and the Jockey Club on board. So these are instances in which LegCo is circumvened, and various networks of contacts are utilized to achieve the means. From Secretary to Development to Chief Secretary to Chief Executive, Carrie Lam has repeatedly used this approach to achieve what she wants. And the scale is getting larger and larger. So they circumvene LegCo. So for the conversation between herself and Rocco Yim, or the 5-member core team, how did they arrive at the decisions, and how about their negotiations with the Jockey Club and Beijing? Everything took place in the dark. The two public construction projects are significant pieces of the WKCD. So for LegCo and the media, and it's right that they wish to see more information on this project. I support this motion moved by Ms. Tanya Chan because since 1997, whenever we work with mainland authorities of different scales and levels, whenever we are in discussions or sign contracts, everything took place outside public eyes, but they were significant matters to the Hong Kong public. When you look at the website of the CMAB, they cite a lot of agreements signed with mainland authorities or government, but we were completely in the dark. We will be discussing the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, and the three governments signed an agreement, and once the agreement was signed, everything took place in the dark. So we don't even know how much the Hong Kong government owes the joint venture, and we do not know how many people died in the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge project. We only know about the injuries or fatalities of workers in the Hong Kong section, but at the main bridge, everything is a mystery. Such practice has been repeated in the Palace Museum project in West Kowloon. Dr. N. Chang said there's already a memorandum of understanding. So who are you trying to deceive? Obviously, discussions between Hong Kong and the mainland took place a long time ago. And with the MOU signed, there is nothing more we can say or do. For the co-location arrangement and the Palace Museum, what we would like to know about the course of the discussions. This is not just significant for the Hong Kong people, but it would also have an impact on the practice and norms in the mainland. There should be transparency in Hong Kong matters and mainland matters and matters between Hong Kong and China. In governments all around the world, they should be held accountable. But if you do not tell us anything, how can you be held accountable? President, the responsible person, Carrie Lam, was promoted from Secretary for Development to Chief Secretary and now Chief Executive. So if we try to dig up the things that happened in the past, it would be hard for the pro-establishment camp to render support. But I hope you understand that we are not trying to target any person or reveal anyone's scandal or remove anyone from office. But this is a question about our system. On the Palace Museum project at WKCD, we should improve or correct our mistakes. Mr. Ray Chan. Thank you, Madam President. I support the motion by Ms. Tanya Chan, moved under Article 73, Bracket 5 and Bracket 10 of the Basic Law of the Hong Kong SAR to summon the Chief Secretary and the Permanent Secretary to attend before the Council on the 24th of January 2018 to testify or give evidence in relation to the WKCDA's agreement with the Beijing Palace Museum signed on 29th of June 2017 regarding the building of the Hong Kong Palace Museum in the WKCD. I'd like to thank Ms. Tanya Chan for consolidating the key papers, including the discussions between Hong Kong and the Beijing government, and how they started discussions with Rocco Design Architects Limited. There should have been a mega performance venue at WKCD, but it was shelved. So for the third and fourth sets of paper, the consultancy agreements and discussions with Waters Economics Limited and Ernst & Young Transactions Limited, they are also significant. As for the core team and senior members of the WKCD board and these relevant discussions, the WKCD's designs on the mega performance venue has been monitored by LegCo and the public. And even though, well, with the C.Y. Leung administration, he signed a covert agreement with Beijing on the Palace Museum, and after the agreement was signed, he explained the details to the public. So the government cannot blame the people or LegCo for seeking to find out about the truth. Hong Kong has never had such a large cultural facility, and it attracted much attention. A lot of people want to promote art and culture in Hong Kong and build a wider cultural platform. But meanwhile, a lot of people are concerned that WKCD would only be an art and culture facility in name, but it will become a property development project involving residential developments and hotels. And some people feel that the government is only placing a focus on tourism, and the Hong Kong Palace Museum project has been doubted because the government did not address the issue of unjust procedures and the hiring of an architect was also a dodgy decision. And on the 11th of January last year, Carrie Lam launched public consultation, and we all knew that it only served to patch up the mistakes, and it only sought to satisfy Section 19 of the WKCD ordinance. It wasn't a sincere and fair public consultation. So to make an analogy, you rape me and I have a baby. So you are asking whether we should get married. So if you ask the question before, it's a totally different story. The consultation exercise did not actually ask the public whether they want this museum or not. When you look at the questionnaire, there's already a predetermined stance, and there are no other options. When we talk about the Palace Museum, there are many aspects to cover. For example, whether or not to build it and where to build it, etc. Last year, FactsWire requested the procurement guidelines from WKCDA based on the Code of Access. The WKCDA and Carrie Lam hired Rocco Yim without tendering, and it was a single tender exercise. In other words, without the WKCDA knowing the tendering exercise was conducted, and subsequently the WKCDA said that management members hired Rocco Yim directly. Carrie Lam said that the consultancy fee of $4.5 million was under $5 million, and it did not require the permission of the board. But with such a big decision, shouldn't the government explain themselves more clearly? I think this is rather unfair to Rocco Yim. He's a master architect and he had worked with the government before. But with such cherry picking and work behind closed doors, he was forced to endure the pressure. The government said he wanted to identify someone with a deep understanding and affection towards Chinese culture as the designer. Rocco Yim was involved in the design work of WKCD, and with projects in Guangdong and Yunnan, he won accolades. So it's difficult to find a better candidate in Hong Kong. So some of my friends who are from the field said that this is actually good news because no one else might want to take up the project. But this is not the question here. It's not about whether he's competent. The issue is the government never explained why they hired the consultant without consultation, and they failed to point out who recommended Rocco Yim. The WKCDA must explain who actually hired Rocco Yim and the detailed process and package, etc.
The WKCDA submitted the consultants report to members at the end of last year, but they prevented members from copying the information, and then commercially sensitive information was rejected too. So that's why Ms. Tanya Chan has demanded all the documents in relation to the to the Palace Museum project. Now, in June 2016, WTCDA directly appointed Rocco Design Architects Limited at a consultant's fee of $4.5 million. So all relevant documents, and including letters, contracts, minutes of meetings, asked to be produced, and this is more than a reasonable demand. As for the Palace Museum replacing the mega performance venue, Ms. Tanya Chan has also asked the government to produce the consultancy contract with Ernst & Young Transactions Limited regarding a commercial viability study of developing a multi-purpose venue to be used for performance, meeting, and exhibitions purposes. Now, the WKCDA insisted that the mega performance venue has long been scrapped. It has nothing to do with the Palace Museum. But then they did not explain the reasons for the decision to scrap the mega performance venue. So they couldn't quell the doubts that perhaps the mega performance venue has been sacrificed for the sake of the Palace Museum, and which is against the demands of many performers. Now, it was only in September last year that it was decided that the mega performance venue be scrapped, but it's based on the consultancy report. But what's in the consultancy report, the public have every right to find out. Now, while we're talking about the mega performance venue, I have to say a bit more. The sector would like to more performance venues similar to the Hong Kong Coliseum. I have to refute what Mr. Lau Kok-Fan said. He said at the Kai Tak Park, there will be a venue for 50,000 spectators, so there is no need for this West Kowloon performance venue. No, sorry. Even when we approved the Kai Tak project, we kept asking, how many singers in Hong Kong could do a concert for 50,000 people? For the Hong Kong Coliseum, I go there every month, and then it's always full. Why is it that recently that Miranda Young was able to hold 11 concerts? It's because Eddie Lau was injured, so he had to give up his slots. And now, how do you expect them to go to Kai Tak to do a concert for 50,000? Do you know what is the seating capacity for the Hong Kong Coliseum? It's less than 13,000 people. When that's when all sides of the seats are open, and the next venue down the scale is the Queen Elizabeth Stadium, 3,500 seats. We're talking about performance venue for about 10,000 people. Now you say Kai Tak, there's a venue for 50,000. Well, sorry. Maybe Eason Chan could do 2 concerts there. Maybe Lady Gaga could go there. But I can't think of any local singers who could do a concert for 50,000 people. So even if you don't talk about Palace Museum, you owe the performing industry proper performance venue. And, there's so much people, try to buy tickets from others because there's such a shortage of large performance venue. And then item point 3, Walters Economics Limited, that's a consultancy contract regarding review of the use of multipurpose venues. And the Ernst & Young's Transactions Limited, the consultant study, have they gone and see how serious it is for touting, for ticket touting? Now, you say the Palace Museum is the best, it's good for the country, for Hong Kong, whatever. Now, I won't argue with you about that because we're not trying to overturn the decision on the Palace Museum. We're just saying that the whole process is not fair and just. But then legally, it's difficult for us to mount a judicial review to overturn the decision, which is more a state decision. But then Carrie Lam was saying that, well, we couldn't let out any wind before the decision is made because then you will all be complaining so much about it. So this project won't live to see the light of day. But now, okay, the decision is made. Can you now tell us what you did in the past, what mistakes you have committed? Or perhaps we won't say you have made mistakes, but rather where you can do better. So then we could do a review. And then next time round, when there's another project like this, maybe it can be done better. No, Lau Kufan said that the District Secretary will come and explain things again to us, but I don't think Matthew John will come again. He will only come once because he's so smart. If he could pass the buck, he will pass the buck. Now, Henry Tang is going to be put in charge, and he doesn't mind if he's the one to be targeted. And then later on, how you're going to turn certain projects into real estate projects and so on. And then if you want to ask about it, no, you get nowhere because they don't need public money. They'll be able to do it on their own. They could develop and thrive on their own. And then if you ask for anything, they'll say it's commercially sensitive information. The Jockey Club and its meetings with the government officials. That's item 7, other related documents. I want to read those documents as well. Okay, maybe the Jockey Club will fund the construction project, but then it means that it will have less funds for other projects, so it's still the same pie. So others may suffer. And you think, okay, the Jockey Club will give this sum of money for the Palace Museum. There's no free lunch. You must have to compensate them elsewhere. So that's why we need all this information. So I speak in support of Ms. Tanya Chan's motion. Mr. Michael Look, is it a point of order? No, I wish to speak. Ms. Claudia Mo has already pressed the request to speak button, so please press the request to speak button. Mr. Claudia Mo. Apology. I have a bad cold. The air quality is poor, so I will be speaking rather slowly. Please bear with me. I think it was 2015, December, or 2016 even. 2016, December, before Christmas Eve. There's an RTHK reporter who tried to reach me on the phone. She said, I'm a member of the WKCDA advisory, the joint subcommittee on the WKCDA. Have you ever heard that the government is going to build a Palace Museum at the West Kowloon site? And I asked, what? What do you mean? And then the reporter said, Palace Museum. You know, the Beijing Palace Museum. I said, no, the reporter said, it's a Palace Museum. And then I told the reporter, I attended each and every meeting of the Joint Subcommittee. I never had this recollection. I've never heard about it. And the reporter said, no. Carrie Lam, today, in Beijing, signed something called a Memorandum of Understanding. And so I thought it was so strange. It's inconceivable even. Now, if you talk about national treasures, of course, you want to go to Beijing to see them, because the most delicate ones. They've all been snatched by the Nationalist Party. They are now in Beijing, in Taipei. So why are we setting up a palace museum here? If you want to do a palace museum in West Kowloon, wouldn't you ask people about it? Well, let alone public consultation. Would you at least ask the electrical? Because we have a joint subcommittee on the development of the West Kowloon Cultural District, but there's no mention of it at all. Later on, when Carrie Jem was asked about it, she said, yes, we did a perfect job in keeping things under wrap. So she thought nothing of Hong Kong people. She decided what she wanted to do, and she worked behind closed doors, so it's entirely her call. And then she said, well, it's the Jockey Club which will pay for it. It's just $3.5 billion, not much. You know, in this council, often we're talking about tens of billions of dollars. There are many white elephant projects that could easily cost $100 billion. So $3.5 billion. And you think that this is to be paid by Jockey Club, so it's fine, and you succeeded in bypassing electrical. And you never thought you should ask what Hong Kong people thought. No, you saw no need to do so. But then as Mr. Ray Chan said just now, the Jockey Club, yes, is body on gambling. Let's all be honest about it. But then at the same time, we often see, say, rehab bus on the road, and it's always written down there, donated by Jockey Club. So now you pay $3.5 billion for the Palace Museum. So where are you going to find savings? From other charitable projects, perhaps? No, you won't mention anything. Just say we're good friends, so we'll just agree this among ourselves. And now this is a fait accompli. We're talking about 10,000 square meters for the site. Floor area, 30,000 square meters. This whole incident is so unfortunate. Politics is all about perception. You deliberately conduct confidential talks, and it wasn't done just in a few days, but over a certain period. And then secretly you signed an agreement, and suddenly you just announced it, and then you said, yes, we did a perfect job in keeping things confidential, as if there's nothing you can do about you. So the perception you give, especially where it concerns Rocky Yim, the architect, it gives the impression there's under-the-table deal. Perception may not be the fact, but in politics, as a government, governance structure, you definitely have the duty and obligations to explain things to the public. Now, they said for the consultancy contract for Rocky Yim is less than $5 million. That's why they can do it. There is no need to make it open. There's no need to do tendering. And the financial controller, the chief executive, and so on, as long as they said okay, then it's okay. There's not even a need to involve the WKCDA board. There's no need for the board to approve or at least agree to it. And then Carrie Lam also gave explanations. She said for many government projects, please wait a second. For the procurement policy of the government, there's always room or flexibility allowed. So under special circumstances, there could be direct appointment. That is, she can directly appoint Rocco Yim. Thank you. You know, I have a blocked nose, but I mean the air quality is so bad. You can't breathe when you're standing on the street. At the time, Carrie Lam was the Chief Secretary for Administration. Now, it was about administrative structure or procedural justice is all gone. She said there needs to be room or flexibility. So it's really up to her.
If this is an elected or democratic government, I would put up with you till the next term. But with the small circle elections, Carrie Lam received 777 votes when Hong Kong has a population of more than 7 million people. In terms of the transfer of interests, so it might have to do with misconduct in public office. I complained to the ICAC, and the complaint was substantiated. When you look at the timeline or chronology, it was very peculiar. In 2016, in November, they said the WKCD board approved the construction of a palace museum. But in September, they decided that there will no longer be a mega performance venue. In other words, in September, they decided to give up on the MPV, but they did not offer alternatives. And 2 months later, they said they approved the construction of a palace museum. In September, they decided not to have an MPV anymore, and in November, they announced the or approved the construction of a palace museum. But back in June, Rocco Yim was appointed designer of the project. So they were jumping the gun, and that was what Carrie Lam called flexibility. So of course we were surprised. So who made such decision? It was her. So was it only part of her plans? And what was her plan? That was to run for the chief executive. Of course, it would be seen as an achievement. The ICAC said the complaint was substantiated. In other words, they would open a file on this case, but they also made it clear that there was no evidence pointing to misconduct in public office. I did not agree, but I respected the ICAC. And Hong Kong is lucky that we still have the ICAC. And as the then Chief Secretary and head of the WKCD board, Carrie Lam briefed us on the WKCD in Leschko, and she was hypocritic. We were very agitated or animated, and she said she would go back and discuss with the government. So she was the government. So was she trying to have a conversation with herself or talking to the mirror? Such hypocrisy was totally unacceptable. And justice must be paid. As for the Memorandum of Understanding on the Palace Museum signed between Hong Kong and China, in 6 months, the MOU could be terminated by either party unconditionally. So it caused a stir in the public. So we asked whether we had to pursue the project, and could we be consulted first. And on the 23rd of December 2016, the MOU was signed. So by the 5th of January, And by the 5th of January, they announced that starting next week, the design and operation of the Palace Museum would be subject to a 6-week public consultation exercise. But what was there to consult? Everything was already decided. They did not ask whether we agree to this project or not because they proceeded already, and there was no way we could say no. So the key is who and when the construction would take place. And everything was already decided. You said the national artifacts must be transported to Hong Kong. What about the transportation fees and maintenance fees? You said the loaning period is often 3 months, but there is flexibility and room to adjust the period as needed. And you said only 120 artifacts would arrive. But everything is about money. Who would be responsible for the operation? So would the Jockey Club take up the full maintenance, security, and safety costs, etc.? So Hong Kong people was kept in the dark, and we only have a humble request to see the relevant records or documents because we want to know what happened. And there is no way we can change the fact that the Palace Museum would be erected in WKCD. And I've said that the Palace Museum was a disgrace in the CV of Carrie Lam, but apparently things could go downhill further. According to the public consultation, more than half the respondents supported the Palace Museum. Well, you already decided to press ahead, so what could happen even if people did not agree? You show LegCo 4 studies and all the sensitive data were masked. So we were very surprised, and we did not know whether it was a commercial or political consideration. And according to the latest design by Rocco Yim, we could not comment. We could not even say we don't like it. So the door is tightly closed, and I'm very unhappy with the arrangement. Mr. Michael Loh. Thank you, President. I speak against Ms. Tanya Chan's motion under Article 73, brackets 5 and brackets 10 of the Basic Law to summon the Chief Secretary of Administration and the Permanent Secretary for Home Affairs to testify or give evidence in relation to the WKCDA's agreement with the Beijing Palace Museum signed on the 29th of June 2017 regarding the building of the Hong Kong Palace Museum, to produce all relevant papers, books, records, or documents. These motions are all moved under Article 73 of the Basic Law. The motions were proposed when the rules of procedure were amended, and members hope that these motions could be dealt with before the motions to amend the ROP. I think the public and watching audience knew what was happening. It wasn't that they really wanted to debate these issues. These issues are all outdated. So these are matters that would proceed anyway, and there was little controversy and consultations were conducted. So why did the members press ahead? Ms. Tanya CHAN used to star in a drama which was political, and we know that there are different political camps in Hong Kong, but we also need cultural heritage like the Palace Museum. Hong Kong is Asia's world city. We need a cultural identity. We need the new and old. We need the trendy and the traditional, and so on. The biggest problem with the West Kowloon Cultural District is money. Of course, money does not do everything, but without money you can't do nothing. So financing is the biggest challenge for WKCD. The SAR government sits on hefty reserves, but when you talk about billions or dozens of billions of dollars in a new facility, financing is not easy at all. So this time the Cultural Bureau made such offer, and the Jockey Club offered $3.5 billion in construction costs in order to realize this project, and there wasn't much controversy from the public, of course, but some members still want to politicize everything. They asked for consultation, so that's what the government did. In April 2017, the government announced the consultation results, whether they were from questionnaires or street surveys or consultation with various bodies. The majority supported a Palace Museum at WKCD. And according to random street surveys, 52% of the respondents were supportive and only 12% against. So you can see that the majority supported the idea. And in June, a proper cooperation agreement was signed. And the one signed at the end of 2016 was only a memorandum of understanding. So I don't think the government only told us about their decision after it was made. So it's meaningless to talk about something of the past. So if you care about the development of the WKCD and the Palace Museum, I think members do not totally object to the idea. But if you find this idea to be good, you should raise some suggestions how the Palace Museum in Hong Kong can be enhanced and how we can meet the tastes of Hong Kong people and to appeal to tourists. When Hong Kong people visit Taipei or Beijing, both Palace Museums are must-see destinations. So for artifacts from the Palace Museum displayed in Hong Kong in the past, they attracted more than 1 million visitors, so they were hugely popular. LegCo's function is to scrutinize laws, draw up laws, and to examine public expenditure. This project does not involve public expenditure. So for an issue without much contention, you are trying to summon officers and you want documents to be produced and so on. I think you are trying to be a judge, which is rather meaningless. We have a lot of important agenda items, including governments and members' motions. My colleague Jonathan Ho proposed a motion to improve labor rights. So these are important livelihood issues. Last year, the motion was already on the agenda since last July, and it's on the agenda every single time. but we were not able to enter this discussion yet. And Mr. Jimmy Ng also moved a motion on reindustrialization, which is again very important to Hong Kong, especially employment and competitiveness. So that seeks to create more jobs, and we are yet to get to that. And now we are discussing a bunch of motions under Article 73, bracket 5 and bracket 10 of the Basic Law. So we all know what's happening. I hope the public can see the real motives behind these motions. Thank you.
Dr. Kokaki. Mr. President, I speak in support of Ms. Tanya Chan's motion on Articles 73 bracket 5 and 73 bracket 10 of the Basic Law to summons the Chief Secretary of Administration and the Permanent Secretary for Home Affairs to produce documents. I'm not going to go into details of the motion. What we can see happening in Hong Kong is that it can always sink lower. It can get even more rotten. Mrs. Carrie Lam has been in public office for over 30 years. When it comes to the Hong Kong Palace Museum, her stance and attitude was, that's what I say, therefore it's going to happen. When she spoke to the public, she said with a poker face that, well, that is going to happen. And she was trying to make use of loopholes. And she said, only $5 million, so we can just go ahead. Members have no choice to invoke Article 73. If the administration had been frank at the outset, the situation would have been different. They have spoken to the WKCDA, and then they spoke to the Joint Subcommittee in LegCo. If it was something great, of course, no one would oppose to it. You have all the votes because the loyalists are the majority here. Some people said, of course, there were public consultations. And how many people were involved? Mr. Ray Chan used an example of rape, but I don't want to go into details, but indeed, Hong Kong people's views have been trampled. And they said that a lot of people support the idea. We have over 7.6 million people. Valid questionnaires returned amounted to 1,528. And 58 valid written submissions and others expressed support. You call this public consultation. If you ask DAB or the FTU to just go into a block of buildings, they would easily get more than 58 respondents to support them. They have taken a site. They have signed an agreement. They have appointed Rocco Yim, and they said a lot of people have been consulted. Was there an option in the questionnaire saying that we don't oppose to it? Of course not, because an agreement has already been signed, and we've been waiting and waiting until now, when Ms. Chan's motion is finally dealt with. Of course, it's late. Of course, we abide by the spirit of contract. It doesn't really matter how rotten government officials are. You have signed the contract, and Hong Kong people can do nothing but take it. We can't ask the administration to flout the law. What we ask for now is for you to tell Hong Kong people the content of the agreement on cooperation We asked for letters, we asked for information papers and documents. Should we just act like what Mrs. Carrie Lam said, that we should all be happy? If it's something that great, what do you have to hide? Why can't you show us so that we can have a frank discussion? The then CS4A rejected to do things under the normal procedure. And they said that, well, even when it comes to Panda, there would not have been any consultation. I think it's just a really bad joke. You try to liken the Hong Kong Palace Museum with a panda. I started out your intelligence level. We do think that the Chief Secretary has overdone it. But before you know it, she stood for an election of the Chief Executive and won. And with the staunch support of the Mainland, she got 777 votes, more than 689. Dr. Kwok, please come back to this motion. Do not digress. No, I won't. I won't digress when it comes to Carrie Lam, because she is the instigator of the whole thing. Well, her career was not affected by what happened at all, and she practically got promoted. And it shows us that you don't have to pay attention to public views. Please come back to this point, Dr. Kwok. Yes. So we have to, under Article 73, require the administration to give us information about the cooperation agreement. And based on what information was the MOU signed? And what are the artifacts? President, you've been to the Palace Museum in Taipei and in Beijing. Well, if you go to the one in Beijing, it wouldn't take you long because it's only a shell. And they call these the scrolls artifacts. If you want to look at treasure related to the hundreds of years of civilization of China, you have to go to Taipei. So I wonder what would be showcased in Hong Kong. $3 billion will be spent, and it's a bottomless pit. We ask for the information. We ask for the documents. West Kowloon will be the terminal of the high-speed rail. Well, the properties there. Dr. Kwok, you have digressed. If you continue to do so, I have the power to stop you. This debate is to talk about whether you support or otherwise Ms. Tanya Chan's motion to summons the CS and the Permanent Secretary to produce documents. Well, I'm going to tell you again why it's important to get the information. We're talking about information papers and agreements. They will tell us what will be showcased and what are the ways they can attract Hong Kong people to visit the Hong Kong Palace Museum. What are grade 1, grade 2, grade 3 artifacts? And would there be any artifacts of very little importance coming to Hong Kong? And point 3 of Ms. Chan, it's about Waters Economics Limited. It relates to a review of the multi-purpose venues, and in the end it was the project is shelved. These multi-purpose venues were to materialize in West Kowloon. How come that because of the Hong Kong Palace Museum we have to sacrifice multi-purpose venues? It doesn't really matter how bad the situation is. Still, we have an accountable government. We have the power to demand from the administration to give us explanations and to produce documents. Government officials, whether they are from the top, like Carrie Lam, or junior government officials, it seems that they can do whatever they want. We want documents to tell us what is involved. This is a breach of procedural justice. We need answers from the administration. Mrs. Carrie Lam chose not to see it. And whether we can get an apology from government officials, we need these documents. If we don't have the documents, we don't have the truth, and Hong Kong people will continue to be diddled by government officials because they say that, well, this is a good thing, there is a need. We need answers from the administration. We need at least documents. Basic law empowers the LegCo to monitor the administration. We can invoke Article 73 to demand the administration to make public certain documents. Some people say, well, just wait. No, we can't because we don't have archive law. We may wait 30 years. The administration could simply destroy everything. All the information, letters, agreements that they don't want to see the light of day will continue to be hidden under the carpet. Not many people from the loyalist camp have spoken. If they respect their duties, then they should support this motion. What do they have to hide? Because we ask for the information using a normal procedure. Why do we have to use Article 73 before we can get the information? Anyway, when it comes to the vote, loyalists would oppose to it. What do they oppose to? To getting information, documents, feasibility studies done by accountancy firms. It's not personal data or privacy. The cultural district is an incomplete one. It started off as a single tender, and then Henry Tan came to get $20 billion. Dr. Kokaki, you're digressing. Come back to the point, otherwise I have to stop you. Please be patient. I won't take much of your time. It's coming to an end. We see a lot of scandals related to the WKCD. If we continue to choose to be blind and deaf, we can't be accountable to our constituents. We need to wake the administration up so that they will not do whatever they want. They won't rely on officials' will, just like on the mainland. We need to support this motion so that we can get information that the administration would like to hide. I so submit. Mr. Junius Ho.
President, I speak in opposition to the motion moved by Ms. Tanya CHAN under Articles 73, Bracket 5 and Bracket 10 of the Basic Law of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region of the People's Republic of China, for the Chief Secretary to produce all relevant papers is for a simple reason. This is an abuse of procedure. Other members have spoken on that. I won't repeat those points. But put very simply, yes, the process, the decision-making process for the Palace Museum was unique in a way, but there have been different parties in the community and so on reviewing this process. Now, this is not a wishy-washy deal between Beijing and Hong Kong. There's nothing secretive about it. It's just about setting up a palace museum at the West Kowloon Cultural District. So this is a decision made for Hong Kong, on behalf of Hong Kong. And after the decision was made, and then the government and Joint Club had to agree on the funding agreement. The Jockey Club would not want to see money wasted, so that's why there's some careful consideration process before the matter went before the WKCDA board. As you may know, the board is the body overseeing the development of the West Kowloon Cultural District, so there are 3 layers already. And then at this council, no, there's no funding approval involved because the money is to be paid by the Jockey Club. But we have a subcommittee, joint subcommittee on the WKCD. It also follows the development of the WKCD. Now, for issues raised by Ms. Tanya CHAN, like if those issues had never been discussed at the joint subcommittee, I would be more sympathetic. But they were all there at the meeting, and they tried to get to the bottom of truth. They asked all the questions at the joint subcommittee meeting. While all of a sudden, then they decided to move this motion under Article 73, Bracket 5 and 10. It's just to waste time. That's the whole purpose. So they are saying the government should be transparent, but it's actually abuse of procedure. We must not allow that to happen. Dr. Kwok said that the government could not have stooped lower, but I would say it's not that the government cannot stoop lower, but rather is our members, especially members of the Democratic camp. There are many who could really not stoop any lower. So is it a case that we don't want to be gatekeeper? Definitely not. We all lucid. We all following this debate, either here in this chamber or in our office. We trying to follow what the other camp saying, but you may think it seems convincing, but it's actually empty speech. So definitely we not just muddling through, but it's the other camp that's muddling through, not us. Thank you. Secretary for Home Affairs.
President, I'd like to thank members for their views on the motion. The SAR government and WKCD authority has always embraced a responsible attitude in explaining the progress of the Palace Museum to the public, and we also offered extensive details. As I said in my opening speech, I have explained our work, so I would not be repeating them here. and I have a general overall response to the views from members. I stress that the WKCDA has announced the memorandum of the cooperation agreement signed, as well as the cooperation agreement signed in 2016, and this has explained the cooperation between the WKCDA and Beijing Palace Museum. And secondly, the WKCDA realized that the public is calling for a transparent process, but the WKCDA must conduct preparation work, for example, establishing the preliminary feasibility of the project. The signing of the MOU establishes the feasibility of the Hong Kong Palace Museum, and this was the first step. Before signing the MOU, the WKCDA had no basis to singularly announce the plan and conduct public engagement or consultation. And from the 11th of January to 8th of March, the WKCDA collected views on the Hong Kong Palace Museum project in terms of overall design, programming, education and interpretation work, etc. The WKCDA held a number of public consultation initiatives to collect views from the public and stakeholders. And at the City Gallery, an 8-month exhibition was held, and online information was also made available to the public. The public could also visit exhibition venues or submit questionnaires online or by email. And there were 2 special meetings organized by the WKCDA in order to collect views from members. And there were meetings with the art and culture sector, as well as the construction, surveying, landscaping sector, as well as a meeting with the chairman and vice chairman of the art and culture committees under the 18 district councils, as well as seminars with young people. And during the consultation period, there was a territory-wide survey. And between 28th of February to the 7th of March 2017, at 18 main landmarks and junctions, surveys were conducted, and there were face-to-face interviews with more than 1,800 people aged 15 or above. These consultation initiatives show that there was general support from the public towards the Hong Kong Palace Museum. The WKCDA embraces a sincere and open attitude in considering all views, and for views collected during the consultation period, they were incorporated in the consultancy study and analysis, and all the views were considered by the WKCDA, and detailed response was already given. The relevant response has been uploaded to the WKCDA website for public and members' inspection. Like other public bodies, there are internal authorization mechanisms in place. The WKCDA board members have different authorizations to allow the authority to operate smoothly. As for the Palace Museum project, the management has to study the feasibility, venue, and funds for the projects. And in June 2016, WKCDA appointed Rocco architects, and the procurement procedures were followed for consultancy contracts under $5 million. And the granting of a single tender was within the powers of the CEO and CFO. Since relevant experience and portfolios are needed, the WKCDA felt that a direct appointment would be the best procurement channel. As some famous architects pointed out, the architects sector often resort to open tender, direct appointment, competitions, etc. So no single method would apply to all projects. The direct appointment of a design or architect consultant would often apply to complicated projects and those of a special nature, and it's not common in and outside of Hong Kong. The WKCDA board decided not to pursue a mega performance venue out of technical and commercial considerations. The WKCDA already explained the considerations behind such decision, and it showed that the decision not to pursue an MPV had no relation with the Hong Kong Palace Museum project. As for the review on mega performance venues in Hong Kong, such study started before the planning for the Hong Kong Palace Museum. The decision to give up on a MPV in WKCD was made after careful consideration. Even without the Hong Kong Palace Museum, the WKCDA would still use the site for other developments. The Hong Kong Palace Museum project received a donation of $3.5 billion from the Hong Kong JC Charities Trust for programming, exhibitions, etc. Such financial arrangement would allow the WKCDA to operate various art and culture facilities, including the Hong Kong Palace Museum. On different occasions, the WKCDA already provided related details to LegCo at different times, and as in the past, the WKCDA will regularly report to LegCo the art and culture facilities and the developments and progress of the Hong Kong Palace Museum. I urge members to veto the motion. I now invite Ms. Tanya Chan to reply, then the debate will come to a close.
Thank you, President. Other members said I'm wasting time, but I really don't have much time to waste, sorry. What I'm saying is totally relevant to you. You say it's a waste of time, that's insult on me. Now, sometimes when the Bureau gives reply, I won't say it's something to do with the Undersecretary. Now, what about the 5-member core team that's such a secretive group? Who's in there? Of course, there's Carrie Lam, the Chief Secretary, Mr. Duncan Pascoe, the only representative of WKCD, and then Betty Fong, the Permanent Secretary, and then Assistant Director of Leisure and Cultural Services, Mr. Mchiwa, and then former Deputy Director of the Architectural Services, Mr. Tan Pen. I think I'm being fair to ask for the documents, see what they have done. They say if they've looked for other sites, they've done various studies. This core group was formed by Carrie Lam. Do we know how WKCDA came about? If you look at the timeline, it's strange. That is one day in September 2015, Carrie Lam was just having a chat with the curator of Palace Museum and said, what if there's a Palace Museum in Hong Kong? And then the Palace Museum came about. So that was the starting point, which is really inconceivable. It's like, oh, it's my birthday, I blow the candles and make a wish and that's it. And what happened after that? We wanted to find out. Now you say it's fait accompli, of course. Mr. Michael Chung said it's something already done. Something happens. A lot happens every day. I'm talking about the end of last year. There was the co-location arrangement and MPSC decision, and then the year before Christmas, it was actually the Palace Museum. So every year something major happened, and you think that because it's something already stale, then it's something past, but then. Many committees and panels work on many projects, items. PAC, how come it's working on passport issues? Now, so we're just asking for documents to find out more. So where there's room for improvement, we can identify that. That's what the purpose of the Public Accounts Committee, and that's the purpose of me asking for documents. Now, like Dr. Mr. Lau Kok-Fun, I often have discussion with him because we want the joint subcommittee on WKCD to be focused on discussion. I put over 100 questions to the Bureau. I've grouped them into different categories. What led to the demise of the mega performance venue, and then Water Economics Limited, Ernst & Young Transactions Limited. I read all the answers, and I still did not get enough information. That's why I'm moving this motion under Article 73. I'm not wasting time. I mean, you can walk out if you want, do whatever you want. We just want to get to the truth. You say the Palace Museum is so good. Why must everything be done in such a secretive way? Why can't it be open and transparent? You know, there is something really bizarre if you consider the chronology again. It was the 23rd of December 2016 that the announcement was made. And Mr. Bill Tong, a member of the WKCDA board, took all the heat. He attended all the interviews. But from him, you can tell what the government's version was put together afterwards. For example, on the 23rd of December, the government's press release said, I'm reading out this press release of the government. The board of the WKCDA has already appointed well-renowned local architect, Mr. Rocco Yim, to take charge of the design of this project. Rocco was present today at the announcement. But after that, something happened, something changed, because that's what IV.Tong said. Now, in November, when there was a special board meeting, 90% of the process was completed. So did the WKCDA board agree, and so on? It's here. There's the procurement guidelines. I've got it here. I printed it out with colors too. Category 3. It's because for this service, this consultancy contract, June 2016, because the Rocco Yim's contract could meet this at $4.5 million, under $5 million, so there's no need to go through the board. It can be done by a single person, or maybe a few others behind the scene. But I've never seen a project where everything was done in secret. Now, okay, you say this special case, maybe like approving Teresa Zhang's moonlighting, you say it's special, so you allow it. But what about Water Economics Limited? Again, it's another secretive consulting contract. For the Water Economics, it's about the mega performance venue. So this consultancy was awarded in secret. And then the Ernst & Young Transactions Limited contract, again, it was awarded by delegated authority. It's the same for Rocco Yim's consultancy. Why? Because Carrie Lam said in June 2016, it was the first time that I was in contact with Mr. Rocco Yim. and then immediately the whole West Kowloon contract was given to him. She said it herself. I didn't try to accuse her of anything. So it was done by delegated authority. But then what's interesting is that IV.Motion said in June, now it was the advanced pre-development consultancy services for sites P4647. And then in January 2017 at the City Forum, IV.Motion said in September 2016 the board was still talking about developing a multi-purpose venue or mega performance venue. He said so at the City Forum. Again, I didn't wrong him in any way. So they sacrificed this mega performance venue and they instead take that site and give it to the Palace Museum. I'm just trying to get to the truth. So for the documents I asked for, I'm being more than reasonable. So it was just a casual chat. What if there's a Palace Museum in Hong Kong? Until now, there's funding for it. The museum is being built, and then in 2022, the museum will be open to the public. So what went through the process? I think it's reasonable for me to ask about it. And then for the pre-development consulting services, was it a one-stop service or are there separate contracts? Because in November, there's a board meetings because, different versions don't match. Now, for the 8th of November meeting was a proper board meeting. And then after that, members of the board were briefed in two groups. And all of a sudden, at the end of November, we were told there was a special board meeting that approved the Palace Museum project. Everything was done in secret, and it seems that they tried to put things together afterwards. Mr. Lang Yu-chung referred to a study that some colleagues did for him was a good one. Ms. Waters, Fiona Waters of the Waters Economics Limited. In 2006, 2007, 2008, she already did a financial analysis for the WKCD, and she said at the time there were only two facilities which would make money. One is the exhibition venue, the other is the mega performance venue. But then all of a sudden now, we're told this mega performance venue is not going to make money, is doomed, so let's just scrap it altogether. Fine, if that's what she said, but she was given the consultancy contract through a single tender. So this Miss Fiona Waters, when she was interviewed by Ming Pao, she said before she completed the report, that was before May 2016, she already knew that the mega performance venue would be gone, it would be taken, replaced by another venue. So they seem to be working out the chronology afterwards. But so I have to find out what her consultancy contract is about and what the consultancy report is about. But the report was submitted to LegCo, but a good part of it was redacted. So maybe you can go and ask the WCDA whether they could supply the document again, even if it's redacted. I'll take it because I want to read it again. And then next, Ernst & Young is about the multi-purpose venue. That study is only $1 million or so. But again, it's done in secret. There's no open tendering. You can go online and you see they have so many erotic contracts asking that, there's a long list of invitations for tenders. But for this project, somehow there's nothing. And then this 5-member core team, I want to learn more about that too. How many meetings have they held? How come? Is it, work outside work? Is it moonlighting or not? But maybe it's not. On the 10th of January at a press conference, that is that press conference that was delayed by a day. 32 questions and 32 replies. I've got the document, both the English and Chinese version. It said that they did it after work. I don't know. Is it true? So you can do it within your work scope, or you can do it as moonlighting, whatever. So I want to know exactly what they did, how they did it. And then this 3 senior members were consulted and were told. Names were not given, but it is Mr. Anderson, Mr. Ronnie Akali, and Mr. Dr. Lo Chung Man. Why is it that in 2016 May they started considering it, and all of a sudden very soon they appointed Rocco Yim, and then 3 months everything was done, and then they go brief the WKCDA board. So how influential are these few members? These 3 senior members consulted. Then because they were consultants, then Carrie Lam thought they could go all the way with this. When it all started with a casual chat, it sounds so strange. If that's the case, there's no need for formal meetings in future. There's no need to keep records or minutes. You just say that you have sounded out a few members and that's it. So what sort of approach is that? Is that the way the government should conduct itself? Now, if I may respond to what the Undersecretary said. Procurement, I told you all about it. MPV, that's the something that Otong said at the City Forum. I didn't try to accuse him of anything. He said he didn't know beforehand Rocco Yim got the contract. So when did Rocco Yim appear in the picture? When did the board know about it? This is, this is also secretive. And then Dr. N. Chan spoke. I was listening attentively to the other members who spoke. She said the Memorandum of Understanding has no legal basis. Now, if you've got the Memorandum, you know that Article 4 says that this MOU is made under the laws of the People's Republic of China, unless you say PRC laws do not form a legal basis. And then it also says that public consultation didn't start from the 9th of January. It was from the 14th of January all the way to the 8th of March, Women's Day. Now, Mr. Lau Kok Fan's not back here, but yes, you're here? Okay, thank you. If you will pass my support my motion, then you, as the chairman of the Joint Subcommittee, through you, we can pass on the information, the questions to the WKCD. That's why I don't want to, hold anything up. So that's why I've put over 100 questions. The WKCDA tried to answer my questions, but some of the questions were not answered. Now, you've tried asking questions of the government. Of course, they never give you all the answers in one go. But if you allow me the opportunity, I will certainly follow up on this carefully. And then the government said there have been consultations or whatever. The Undersecretary, Mr. Jack Chen, just said this. It's about operation and everything else. It's not just about whether you want a Palace Museum or not, and if you want it, where should it be, how big it should be, what should be in it, and so on. The first day when I answered the reporters, I said, yes, my first reaction was, yes, it's good if we have a Palace Museum in Hong Kong, but I thought it was at another location. And there would be world-class exhibits in Hong Kong. Definitely that would be good for Hong Kong. But there was no consultation whatsoever. And as members said, it's a fait accompli. And even now, they are just giving out information in drips and drabs. And then they put the Palace Museum at West Kowloon without consultation. It's actually not fair to the Palace Museum. I hope it's not going to happen again. Thank you. And I'll put the question to you that the motion moved by Ms. Tanya Chan be passed. Will those in favour please raise their hands? Ms. Tanya Chan claims the division. The division bell will be rung for 5 minutes.
Will members please proceed to vote? Will members please check their votes? If there are no queries, voting shall now stop and the result shall be displayed. From FC's 27 present, 5 in favor, 21 against. From GC's 28 present, 14 in favor, 14 against. The question is not agreed by majority respectively of each of the two groups of members who are present. I declare the motion negatived. Second motion. Motion to be moved by Honorable Chu Hoi-Tik